My name is Chris Goettl, and today I'm going to be walking you through some basically a quick update of where we're at from a product perspective on the Ivanti Neurons for Patch Management solution. We're going to talk about several things today, but the biggest one is some of the recent product releases. So for those of you who may not be familiar, I'm Vice President of Product Management for Ivanti's Endpoint Security Group. I've been managing our patch management solutions for quite a while now, and keeping also up with a lot of the recent changes and challenges in the industry. So we're going to talk about some of those as well. Today's agenda, I'm going to talk through some of the latest challenges and trends on the vulnerability landscape. Really, there's a couple of major challenges that are coming up. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to overcome those obstacles. And really, it's getting into the Ivanti Neurons experience is built for really tackling today's challenges. Some of you may be using our on-prem solutions today, and many of you may even have been using those products for 5, 10, even more years. There's definitely, some evolutions to how we've been doing things in the cloud experience, and we're going to go through several of those today. And the last part here, we are going to get into the demonstration and actually show you some of those changes live and in product. Throughout, we're going to have a couple of polls as well. So if you'd like to participate in that, when we get to those polls, they're going to pop up on screen, and you'll be able to answer that question quickly. And we'll talk a little bit about what we see for responses. So first off, we're going to talk about two market challenges today. The first one is around the number of exploits accelerating. The number of software exploits that are being discovered and actually actively being used is definitely increasing, but the number of zero-day vulnerabilities is also increasing. I believe so far this year, we're at 10 plus zero-day vulnerabilities in Google Chrome already, which also means those same 0 days were affecting the Edge browser because it's Chromium based. Microsoft has had a number of zero-day vulnerabilities already this year. In fact, the September Patch Tuesday, there were 4 0 days that were actively exploited before Patch Tuesday hit. So the OS update and the Office update this month resolved 4 0 days. Since then, I was just reading up on some news that identified that there's a 5th vulnerability that was actively being exploited in that September list of vulnerabilities as well. The number of exploits that we're seeing definitely accelerating. The other challenge is around continuous patch releases. Microsoft may have a fairly consistent cadence, Patch Tuesday, that second Tuesday of every month. But most vendors have more of a continuous release cycle. That means as soon as their product is ready for release, they will release it. So if you look at Apple, they tend to release about every 3 to 5 weeks. Google Chrome releases a security update every single week now. Since August last year, 2023, they switched over to a cadence of doing a security update every week. So that means every week we're going to have an Edge and a Chrome browser update that we need to keep up with. So if you're just doing once a month maintenance, even if your SLA is 14 days, there's a whole bunch of security vulnerabilities that are continuously releasing that you're not accounting for until next month. So we're going to talk a little bit about these two challenges and really what that means from an impact perspective. Before we do that though, poll number 1. Does your organization use a risk-based approach to vulnerability remediation? So your options there are no. So if you're not familiar with what a risk-based approach is, that's most likely the case there for you. Some of you may be familiar with the CISA KEV list. This would be a kind of free version of a risk-based vulnerability management kind of solution where you're getting a prioritized list of here's the most dangerous things out there. Some of you who are using the Neurons for Patch Management solution, that's the IN4PM, Ivanti Neurons for Patch Management, you know that out of the box, you get that risk-based experience there, which definitely gives you a lot of that visibility. And those of you who are familiar with risk-based vulnerability management solutions, like Ivanti's risk-based vulnerability management platform, you know that there's definitely a larger kind of immersive experience that allows you to get in, better prioritize, identify risks, and even flow through to remediation workflows, handling exceptions, and more of the complete end-to-end vulnerability response experience. All right, so we're getting some great responses back here. Definitely swaying towards a lot of people are becoming more and more familiar with that risk-based vulnerability management solution. So that's definitely a good sign. Excellent. And we do have several Neurons for Patch Management users on here today. So you're going to get some great view of some of the new stuff coming out in just a minute here as we get into the demo. All right, so moving on. New platform. So there we go. I'm going back over to my slides now. There we go. We just switched platforms here, so I'm getting familiar with the new demonstration platform as well. So bear with me today. All right, so back to our first market challenge. Exploits are accelerating at a rapid pace. So if you did grab the slides, you're going to be able to see the links for the different reports that we pulled this information from. But we're seeing a very similar challenge across all the different outlets of research. The first stat here, the 180% increase, this came from the 2024 Verizon Data Breach Investigations report. And what they were tracking is a huge increase in the number of software exploits that are happening as part of data breaches and ransomware attacks. And there's some big contributors to this. So I think nobody can forget the Move It campaign. It was a rather large data breach campaign that ran, even had a round 2. And definitely was a large contributor to this, and a few other notable campaigns like that. But in general, we're seeing the increase in the number of software vulnerabilities being exploited in attacks. The second stat here, 50% increase in zero-day exploits year over year. So this came from a report that I believe Google and Mandiant paired up on and really looked at how much we're seeing zero-day exploits increasing. And that definitely seems to be a continuing trend here in 2024. And then 95% of IT and security professionals believe that security threats will be more dangerous due to AI. If you haven't seen it already, there was a very interesting research article that released from the University of Illinois earlier this year. And that was looking at the use of generative AI to basically train up small language models to be specialist agents that would be able to execute or orchestrate an attack and even be able to discover unknown vulnerabilities and exploit them. So what they did was they trained up the small language model. So if you're familiar with large language versus small language models, we found out very quickly that a single agent using a large language model is pretty easy to, you can draw it down a rabbit hole and it'll get stuck there. So earlier attempts at seeing how to use AI for exploits of vulnerabilities ran into that challenge quite a bit. The new approach that they took was training up these small language models to act as specialists. So you actually build up what would be kind of the equivalent of a threat actor, group. And there's an AI agent that acts as kind of the project manager of the overall attack. It's going to kind of divvy out tasks amongst the different things. And then they had specialist agents for, you'd have a specialist for your SQL injection attacks and another specialist for cross-site scripting. Each of those would know how to do something very specific. So you'd, the AI would go and look at a website. They had a set of websites that they spun up for this trial. They had it look at that, discover a vulnerability, and then find which AI agent actively could go and try to exploit those vulnerabilities that were discovered. And they found that they were able to get a high degree of success and speed and accuracy at doing so. So that was a very interesting read on that. But news like that has definitely been popping up more and more this year. So that's our first challenge. And that brings us into poll number 2. So here, quick question on this one. How many of you have a zero-day response plan? So you might have SLAs for your normal maintenance, but many organizations that I've been talking to in the past year or two here have been starting to have a separate SLA defined specifically for zero-day response. Not a kind of a break glass out of band process, but really truly having a continuous 0-day response plan with an SLA in place. All right, so yes, we have a 48-hour SLA, have a 48-hour SLA, but your target might be less. No 0-day response plan. Someone pulls the fire alarm and we run. That's always a good one. Yep. And then I don't have visibility into the security team. Again, there may be cases where some of you aren't as close to what their process may be, but we definitely are seeing quite a number with that 48-hour SLA, which is a good thing to see. Perfect. We even have somebody with that more aggressive target. So definitely good to see that a lot of organizations are focused on making that more of a well thought out response plan than having it be reactive. All right, so that gets us into our next market challenge, continuous patch releases. Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, many of these companies have a continuous release process that's on a predictable schedule. Second Tuesday of the month, Microsoft Patch Tuesday. It's kind of one of the longest running, Patch Tuesday focused outlets that you can, subscribe to and get updates on. But most products release on a more continuous basis. Like I mentioned before, Apple has more of a 3 to 5 week cadence. Google is releasing every week, which means that I've also got a Firefox or a Edge update every week. Firefox releases 2 to 3 browser updates per month on average. That means on any given week, I could have 3 different browser updates, all with security vulnerabilities being resolved in them. Most third-party applications have that continuous release model. In fact, any of you who have been on our Patch Tuesday webinar series, that's one that myself and one of my team members, Todd Schell, and I host together. We always wrap up each Patch Tuesday release with what we call the in-between the Patch Tuesdays. And there's typically a long list of a dozen or more third-party updates that had come out in between Patch Tuesdays, all with security vulnerabilities tied to them. So this is definitely a growing challenge. And it's one where, here's my prediction, in the next 18 to 24 months, we're going to see a third SLA become more mainstream established in most organizations. You're going to have your regular maintenance SLA. A lot of us are on more of a 14-day SLA timeframe for that. Your 0-day response, which again, we saw that 48 hours is a pretty typical SLA for that now. The third one is going to be a more aggressive priority update SLA, where you're going to be responding to some of these continuous vulnerability releases on a more regular basis. And that we expect is going to be more on a weekly basis. All right, so poll number 3. How are you reporting patch compliance? This has definitely been a topic that's been shifting. Most traditional methods of doing this for the patch management side is my maintenance window starts on the second Tuesday of the month. And if my SLA is 14 days, that means at the end of that 14-day cycle, I'm going to measure compliance at that time frame. Now, if you start to look at the security team, they've been shifting over to more of an exposure time level reporting. And that's what we're seeing more and more coming up. So reporting based on each patch's release date, reporting based on that exposure time, but you may have to do some manual input to achieve that. If you're using Neurons for patch management, you're familiar with our compliance reporting experience, which I'll be showing you guys here in just a moment. That's doing that type of calculation out of the box for you. But this is giving you kind of a better idea of truly how you're doing from a compliance perspective. So we still have some who are doing it based on that maintenance window, but several now that are shifting over towards that reporting off of each patch's release date for tracking your SLAs. Excellent. All right, so getting into the approach on how to tackle some of these challenges. So there's kind of 3 main things that we're going to talk about today. First is risk-based insights. More and more, we need to break down the barriers between the security and the operations team. The patch management solutions, again, traditionally have been focused more on, here's a patch, it needs to be updated, giving you the levers, knobs, and guardrails to be able to push that update out and not have it operationally break things across my environment. The security implications, though, have been compounding the need to get more risk focused in how we're approaching this. We can't leave certain updates to hang out very long in our environment if they have known exploits against them. So we need visibility into what are those known exploits. We need a better way to prioritize. So the integration of Ivanti's vulnerability risk rating and known exploitability or known exploited vulnerabilities list into the patch experience has been part of that risk-based insight. Providing that compliance view out of the box, so you're not sitting there having to export data and continue to calculate and do additional data massaging to get to that answer of how are we doing from a compliance perspective. And then providing canned reports that really focus on a risk-based approach. And I'm going to show you what those that newer type of reporting experience would look like with more of a risk-based focus. Evolving that patch cadence, we're going to show you how we can configure your policy to respond to doing those regular maintenance, priority updates, and zero-day response, all from a single configuration. And that compliance and SLA tracking, we're going to go in and show you the actual product experience around that and give you a little bit of visibility into how that calculates. So this is the product that we're going to be demonstrating here next is the Neurons for Patch Management solution. Again, if you're not familiar with the product, this is the capabilities or experiences you can expect from this. The screenshot on the right here is one you're going to be seeing in just a moment as we get into the product. So with that, I am going to stop sharing the slides and go over to sharing my screen. All right. So Ivanti Neurons, this platform does a lot more than just patch management. It's got a analyst workspace where you can do everything from discovery to inventory, remote control. It provides you a number of different tools for managing your environment. One of the capabilities, though, that is a part of this is the patch management experience. But on the main dashboard here, you can see a number of things. I can see information about the devices in my environment, some recent past 7 days kind of highlights. What have we recently discovered in my environment? I've got some new virtual servers, some virtual workstations, a couple of unknown devices that I may want to look at, the devices discovered by OS, and then the different departments that have been reported on across the devices that I've been discovering. The digital experience scoring. This is something where if you are interested in getting to that digital experience score, this gives you that both operational and security-based kind of metrics about how my devices are, how are my digital experiences for my users. So device scoring, security score, app score, services score. This can integrate with service management solutions too, including Ivanti's service management solution. That gives you the ability to really have a fully integrated experience for endpoint management, security capabilities like patching, and the ability to integrate with that service management stack. Getting into the patch management experience, the first thing that we're going to start on is looking at that risk-based perspective. This is first screen that I'm going to show you is called Patch Intelligence. This is where we're providing a lot of that out-of-the-box additional intelligence about updates that are coming out. Now, we release content on a continuous basis. You can see some of the more recent updates. Just on the 13th here, they were released. Several updates for Windows and on the Mac OS for a variety of third-party updates. Let's go and look at, none of those had security things relating to them except for this Thunderbird one. You can see over here, we've got 16 CVEs on that one. So there is security implications for that one. But let's go and look at a little bit more information. So we can say, only show me updates that have vulnerabilities resolved. More importantly, let's go and look for some that specifically have known exploited vulnerabilities tied to them. So here, we can get in and we can show the updates that have been released and see the different metrics about them, the vulnerability risk rating group score and vulnerability risk rating. These are the metrics that we use in the Ivanti Neurons risk-based vulnerability management platform. And you can see that CVSS and that vulnerability risk rating will differ. And that's because The vulnerability risk rating is a continuously calculating score. It's going to shift based on activities in the actual market. If threat actors are doing things actively against a vulnerability, that vulnerability risk rating is going to increase in score. If there's no activity going on, it may decrease in score. So in this case, the Thunderbird update's been pretty boring. Let's go and see if we can find something a little bit more interesting. The September OS updates had a number of vulnerabilities that were resolved. And again, trending wise, it looks like many of them are dropping down in severity based on how the activities in the market are progressing. Let's see here. I was trying to find one that had, we'll remove that real quick and just go to known exploited only. All right, so here, top of the list, we've got a vulnerability that is actively being exploited. It's a remote code execution. The original CVSS score was a 7.5, but you can see here the vulnerability risk rating increased because there's known exploits against this, and continued activity will continue to push that score up. So this score becomes more robust and more accurate to really tell me the risk to my environment. So that gives you an idea of how that data can help to provide you more visibility into that. And we're going to show you how you can use some of those metrics in your policy here in just a second. So let's switch over to actually configuring a policy on how we want to approach patching in my environment. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select one of my policies. And in there, you see we've got 3 different deployment tasks that we can configure. Routine maintenance. This is my monthly maintenance task. It's where I'm going to do my OS update and whatever else I'm doing during that regular kind of Patch Tuesday cadence. Priority updates. This is if I want to define some updates to really focus on responding to those more continuous release vulnerabilities that we need to resolve, like the browsers. And then 0-day response. How can we configure a task that lets us go and respond to a 0-day quickly and easily, but still within the defined boundaries of our policy? So if we configure this, we're going to go in and give just a couple of examples as to how you might configure this. So for my routine maintenance, if you're like most organizations, you're going to probably start your regular monthly patching on Patch Tuesday. And my first group, I might kick them off to start, within 2 days of Patch Tuesday at a specific date and time. I can pre-stage the patches and everything there. I can define the different criteria for what I want to deploy. So I might want to deploy by severity. In this case, if I do all security patches and non-security criticals, that will then go and deploy based on those criteria. Dynamically, it will update that policy each time that task comes around. If I want to lock things down more specifically, I can use what we call a patch group, which then it lets me explicitly define what I want to deploy or even what I want to exclude. So let's say I'm doing a more dynamic configuration, but then I want to exclude a specific set of patches that break something in my environment. So then I could select and do an exclude of that particular group of patches. If I've got a very strict change control process in my environment, nothing gets rolled out until it's been approved. You can also use this patch group as an inclusive model where you can say only the patches that have met approval are allowed to go out to my environment. So this allows you to get into a variety of different ways that you can configure your monthly maintenance. All right, so now we want to go in and configure that priority updates task. In this case, we can do a daily or even a weekly task if we want to. Let's configure this for daily. And we're going to do this at 8 p.m. each evening. By the way, this will execute at local machine time. So if you're going across multiple time zones, that's fine. And then if we're going to do that deployment, we can say, I want to deploy by severity, but I only want to do it for a specific set of products. So in this case, if we wanted to do Chrome, we could make sure that we've got Chrome selected as a product family. And then we want to do the Edge browser. So I've got Edge selected here as well, and Firefox. So if we wanted to make sure that those 3 browsers are updated on a weekly basis, this template is now configured to make sure that we're doing any security updates for those 3 products. Each day it will check. So if today the Chrome update comes out and tomorrow the update for Edge comes out, that's okay. We can still respond to that. All right, so we're gonna look at one more thing here. The additional deployment options allow me to go in and use that vulnerability risk rating to continue refining my policy to do very specific things. So if I wanted to use, let's say I want to do that 0-day response task, but in this case, I want to do remediation based on that vulnerability risk score, or even say any patches that have a known exploited vulnerability against them. I can still use combinations where I can lock things down a little bit. So using these in conjunction with each other lets me really dial in exactly what I want to allow for each of these deployment tasks. But now I've got a configuration that allows me to address vulnerabilities in each of those 3 different buckets. So wrapping up, we're going to look last here at compliance reporting. So the compliance reporting experience is going to allow you to configure a compliance report where you're going to be able to set your threshold. So if I edit this configuration, I can set what my compliance threshold is, also what my SLA is. Now, in that configuration, then every day it will look at the machines that you've assigned to that policy, and it will determine, well, most of these have 0 endpoints in them. Thanks, demo experience. There we go. All right, now we got some good ones. So here, each of these machines are being calculated daily and making it so that I can see exactly, no, this one only has Linux systems in it, of course. But each one of these is being calculated daily. The interesting thing about this is it's not doing it based on the maintenance window. It's doing it based on each patch's release. So if a patch released today, it will start the 14-day clock to determine if that patch is compliant. If tomorrow a patch releases, it starts calculating for that particular patch for that time frame. So this compliance reporting is kind of a constantly moving calculation that ensures that you're able to understand where you're at from a compliance standpoint against each individual patch within that policy, and make sure that you can set your own SLAs and timeframes for that. If you're interested, those of you who are not currently a Ivanti Neurons customer, you can follow the details on the not yet a customer side there and get to the form to contact somebody in sales, and they will be happy to help get you set up with a demo, even get into a POC, get you access to a tenant so you can play around. And for those of you who are already a Neurons customer, if you're not using Patch today, you can easily reach out to your rep to get that module set up for your tenant. And if you do have Patch and you've seen a couple of the new features here that you may not have seen yet, they just released recently. So jump in and check out the product and see what updates we've got there. Especially those multiple tasks is a very important one for a lot of organizations trying to be more responsive. So thank you everyone for joining today, and have a great week.